Hello, and a huge welcome to Ready, Set, Meno Live, Peppy's flagship World's Menopause Day event. I am Danielle Auerbach, SVP of Growth at Peppy, and I will be your host today. You're here because you refuse to be caught off guard. While some employers are still waking up to the fact that menopause belongs in the workplace conversation, you are already at the starting line, ready to act early, support better, and lead the change. Right now, there's an employer out there whose best performer has just said, I'm going through the menopause. One company is panicking, scrambling for answers. Another is calm, prepared, and able to say, Great, we've got support in place for you. By the end of today, you'll have the tools to be that second employer. And isn't that exactly the kind of employer you want to be? Prepared and supportive? Because the smartest employers aren't waiting until symptoms have pushed people out the door. They're starting early with proactive wraparound care. They're protecting culture, keeping talent, and proving the ROI of early action. That's exactly what this event is about, helping you stay ahead with practical steps that you can implement right away. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll hear from lived experiences, clinical experts with the frameworks that you need, and employers who have already taken action. Get leave inspired, equipped, and ready to make menopause support a competitive advantage for your organization. But before we get into the thick of it, I have a little bit of housekeeping to cover with you. We're recording today's session and we'll share the replay of these slides afterwards. Please do use the chat as we go. We'll have a live Q&A at the end of some of the sessions. And any tech issues that you have, please use the email on the screen and we will help you as quickly as we can. Amazing. Now that we're all started, we're going to kick things off with a quick poll, which should appear on your screen now. So the question that we're asking for you is, where are you in your menopause support journey? Option 1, we're at the starting line looking at how to introduce support. Option 2, we've set policies but now need to turn them into action. Option 3, we've started, we already have the support in place but we want to go further. And option 4, we're ahead, embedding proactive whole person support. We'll give it another second. Great. We have an incredible session lined up for you, so let's get into it. To set the stage, I'm thrilled to hand over to someone who has been leading the charge in transforming how workplaces think about menopause. Dr. Merdula Poor, Peppy's co-founder and CEO, is here to show us why acting early is essential for organizations. She's going to take us through the business case, the clinical case, and the legislative case, from preventative health and lifestyle medicine to ROI to the employment rights bill. Get ready to be inspired and challenged in equal measure, and please give a huge welcome to Dr. Merdula Poor.
Thanks, Danielle, and good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today at Ready, Set, Meno Live. As Danielle said, you're here because you're not waiting to be caught off guard. There are some employers who are only just realizing that menopause belongs in the workplace conversation. You are already at the starting line. You're the leaders who want to act early, support better, and really lead the change. And that's exactly the spirit of today. So this year's World Menopause Day theme is lifestyle healthcare. And that's not a slogan, it's a strategy, because the earlier we intervene with proactive lifestyle-based support, the bigger the impact. Perimenopause symptoms can begin as early as in your mid-30s. And if all that someone gets is a rushed 10-minute GP appointment, they're often left with more questions than answers. So what they need is joined up wraparound care, expert clinicians, plus lifestyle medicine, support that looks at the whole person at home and at work and keeps them thriving, not slipping through the cracks. So I want you to picture something, and it's a story we've heard several times. So right now, somewhere in the UK, there's a senior leader, brilliant, ambitious, talented, who's quietly turning down a promotion because brain fog has knocked her confidence. There's a line manager who's reducing her hours because sleepless nights are draining her energy. There's a high performer walking into HR to hand in her notice because she doesn't see a way to keep going. These are not edge cases. As we say, at Peppy, we've heard this story multiple times and they're an everyday reality. When we translate them into business impact, the numbers do really sting. It's at least £30,000 to replace a single employee in recruitment, training, lost productivity. But the real cost is harder to measure. The experience, the leadership, the relationships, the culture walking out of the door. And can any business really afford to lose that? The smartest employers aren't waiting until someone resigns to start giving this attention. They're already supporting people early on in their journeys, maybe even in their 30s. They're embedding proactive care into their benefit strategy. They're normalizing menopause as part of workplace health before the crisis, not after. And they're also educating all the other people around the individuals who may encounter those symptoms in the future. That's the competitive edge, and that's prevention as power. So what does getting ahead actually mean? Early education, so symptoms don't blindside your people. Access to clinicians, menopause specialists, nutritionists, mental health practitioners who can actually give answers and care unique to that individual that goes far beyond what traditional healthcare covers in short appointments. Managers who have the frameworks and the language to respond in the moment. No awkward silences, no, I don't know what to say. And holistic wraparound care that tackles sleep, nutrition, movement, stress, and mental health alongside clinical support. And let's not forget that legislation is coming. The Employment's Right bills will make menopause workplace support a legal requirement for employers with 250 or more staff. But here lies the real opportunity for you. Don't wait until the law forces your hand. Be the employer who's already ready, the one who your competitors are scrambling to catch up with, and the one that your people talk about with pride. I want to share a story with you that captures both the risk and the opportunity that we're talking about today. We're going to hear a little bit more from British Airways later, but one of our clients there told us, when I was at British Airways for the first time round and was going through the perimenopause, there was no help from anywhere. I couldn't get any help with the symptoms, and as my private life was becoming more difficult, I decided to leave BA even though I'd been working there for many years. I've now come back, and if something like Peppy were around when I was there the first time, I wouldn't have left. That's the ripple effect of early action. You don't just save one career, you protect culture, you build loyalty, and you inspire confidence across the board. So here's my challenge to you. By the end of this event, I want you to picture your own organization and ask yourself, where are the hidden costs of menopause showing up? In retention, in absence, in performance? Many of you are working in HR functions and you will have some of this idea, or at least you'll have an inkling of where this is going on. How early are we acting? Are we supporting people with perimenopause in their 30s or only once they're at breaking point? And do our managers have the confidence to turn intent and goodwill into action? Most importantly of all, are we ready to lead or are we waiting to follow? If you take just 3 things away from me today, let them be these. Firstly, early action beats late reaction every time. And we know this. It applies to all areas of our health and of our organizational health. Whole person wraparound care is what keeps people thriving. And the time to lead is now, not when the law tells you to. Together, we can make menopause support something that every workplace delivers with pride. And in doing so, we'll protect not just our people, but our culture, our performance, and our businesses for the long term. You're here because you're the pioneers. Thank you for joining us today. I'll hand back to Danielle.
Thank you so much, Mardula. I thought your point about the cost of replacing a senior leader was really interesting, and it really brings home that supporting people isn't just about helping them thrive day to day, which of course we know is extremely important. It's also about what it costs your business if you don't. So thank you for that. And thank you to the team at British Airways for sharing that insight from their employee. Before we dive into our next session, we just wanted to bring up the results from the poll that we did earlier on in this session and just go through that so we have a little bit of context of who is on the call today. So again, the question was, where are you in your menopause support journey? And it looks like the majority of our audience today has started, already have support in place, but want to go further. And this is very encouraging to see that there's already support in place. We at Peppy are, of course, very passionate about bringing menopause support into the workplace. So it's encouraging to see that there is menopause support in place for majority of our audience. And then it sounds like next is the next cohort within this audience group is you're at the starting line looking at how to introduce support. And I can tell you, you have come to the right place for that. So thank you for that. We're now going to move into a session that I know many of you have been waiting for, and with good reason. Our next speaker is not only a broadcaster and activist, but a groundbreaking voice in the menopause conversation. Karen Arthur is the founder and host of the incredible podcast, Menopause Whilst Black, which champions underrepresented voices and spotlights the diversity of menopausal experiences. A former teacher, designer, and model, Karen is also the author of the children's books, Grandma's Locks, a radio broadcaster, and a textile artist. Her work has been featured in Vogue, The Guardian, BBC, Channel 4 with Davina McCall, and she's advocated for equity in women's health all the way to Parliament. She is the founder of the Joy Retreats Barbados, the world's first retreat for Black women at any stage of menopause, and her influence is now shaping the national education and support programs with Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the University College London. Karen's story is deeply personal, hugely inspiring, and packed with lessons that every workplace needs if they want to stay ahead of the curve. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our headline speaker, Karen Arthur. Hello, Karen.
Hi,
How are
hi,
you doing today?
Danielle.
It's great to see you again.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, everyone. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, so thank you. We're very excited for this conversation, Karen, and very much looking forward to kicking things off. So I'm going to jump into the crux of it.
Okay,
Karen, your story has inspired so many people. Can you share how menopause reshaped your career and what lessons that holds for employers who want to get it right?
sure. So, first of all, hi, welcome. Thank you for having me. As you've said, and you my wonderful bio, thank you for that. My name's Karen Arthur, and I'm a former teacher. I was a teacher for 28 years. Um, and I started in performing arts. I started as a dance teacher and I moved across to pastoral leading, leading a team in a boys' school in Southeast London, a very busy boys' school in Southeast London. So I lived in London for 36 years. And I was busy, like many of us. I was busy doing my job. I'd split with my partner, so I focused my entire life on making sure that I was looking after my girls, changing my will, making sure that I could make enough money to pay the mortgage, upkeep my lifestyle, that kind of thing. Um, and something started to happen to me, but I brushed it aside. I started to experience physical symptoms of menopause, um, but I brushed them to the back of my head because I thought I wasn't old enough, but also I haven't got time. I didn't have time for menopause. I didn't have time for things to slow me down, and I wasn't in pain. But the first things that started to impact my life were actually panic attacks. I had never had issues with my mental well-being before. And around my kind of early 40s, mid 40s, I started to have panic attacks that would debilitate me. So I would go into my office, I'd think, right, what have I got to do? Write a long list, look at the list, find the words blurring on the page and then burst into tears or have to go for a walk or find if I was watching myself from above, I'd be that woman walking around in circles and not quite sure what I was going to do. And that really threw me, but I did nothing about it. No one was talking about menopause. We're talking, early 2000s, mid 2000s. No one was talking about menopause. They certainly weren't talking about menopause at the workplace. And what I was more concerned about was the fact that I might lose my job and I might get the sack. And so it all came to a head in 2014. There'd been a fire alarm in our meeting, and instead of going downstairs and assembling at the assembly point, I went up and got my laptop and went home and walked past everybody. And I carried on working that evening. And when I stopped working, I wanted to go to bed. I was tired, but I wasn't aware of. I thought, well, if I go to bed now, then it will just bring the morning back to me earlier and I'll have to get up and do it all over again. And I burst into tears. And that started a kind of a, a way of going into me seeking help, having some time off. I was signed off from work. Um, Again, I wasn't making the connection between menopause and my mental well-being because I thought menopause was just hot flushes. I didn't know it was brain fog. I didn't know it might be tingly legs. I didn't know it was issues with my teeth, which I'd had issues with my gums. I didn't know any of that stuff because no one was talking about it. And when they weren't talking about it, they were talking about it. There wasn't anybody who looked like me. And I think that's important. And I think that's what I want to get across is that we might hear the same story 6, 7, 8 times by someone who we don't have anything in common with or any connection. But the minute we see someone or hear from someone who shares a similar background or simply shares the same skin colour, suddenly the penny might drop. So I left teaching. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And even when I went to the doctor, even though I said I've got hot flushes, I'd lost my balance and I'd fallen, so I was in quite a lot of pain. Remember, I said I started in performing arts. I was a dancer. I don't lose my balance, guys. You know, and so all of these things were feeding into my experience. But the doctor didn't make the connection between my mental well-being and menopause, and therefore I was offered antidepressants. Um, and also, I wasn't ever offered hormone replacement therapy because I think even at the time, if I'd have been offered it, I would have said no because my mother's uh, not experience, but her opinion on menopause and on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, although we call that MHT now, is that it was something that would cause breast cancer. She was basically listening to, understandably, the research from the year 2000, which has since been debunked. So I went through my own journey, and it wasn't until I left teaching, which I never thought I'd do. I thought I'd teach forever. I thought that I would teach and then retire and then wait for my grandkids and sit in the corner and knit. I have grandkids now, but I don't, you know, but I thought that was my lot. Now it turns out I start to focus on myself for the first time. I start to focus on myself. But had I had help, had my workplace been someone who was talking about menopause, which many workplaces, not enough, but many are talking about now. If I had been offered support, if people had joined the dots and said, "Oh, we can give you help in this," had I felt that I didn't have to keep it quiet because I thought I might lose my job. Had I had some job security, I might still be in a position where I could work in an in a secondary school. But what's important for employers to understand is about people will suffer alone. You know, menopause mandate recently had a statistic that just came out. They did a menopause mandate survey and it came out at the beginning of the week. And they were saying that the top symptoms are anxiety, brain fog, and low mood, not hot flushes. We assume menopause is hot flushes, but it's much more than that. And that 70% of women say menopause affects their job, 40% have considered quitting, you know. Every workplace needs some kind of support and menopause policy in place. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that when I left my teaching job and started to look more into about how menopause uh, impacted people who look like me, black women in particular, what I found out was shocking. I didn't know, for example, that black women experience menopause 8.5 months and up to 2 years earlier than our white counterparts. And when I found out, I didn't understand why that wasn't common knowledge, you know? Um, and South Asian women start menopause even earlier. So there are nuances within the menopause experience that still people weren't talking about. And that's what led me eventually to start my podcast, Menopause Whilst Black. I have a podcast that is 8 seasons in, where we literally interview black women and talk about our experiences. And, I wasn't going to start a podcast. I didn't think I was a podcaster. I thought you needed, I don't know, a degree or something. I don't know. But actually, the year 2020, when we were all in lockdown and George Floyd was murdered, and the events surrounding all the aftermath of that really kind of galvanized me, as it did many black creators and founders, galvanized me to speak up about my story. But I also wanted to reach out to black women who were menopausal, knowing that menopause exacerbates stress, knowing that racism is a form of stress. Knowing that black women start menopause earlier than our white counterparts. And I wanted to give them a hug and I wanted to find out more. So I did a survey. I asked black women based in the UK to tell me what they knew about menopause. And the overriding answer was nothing. And we want to hear more and we want to know more. So the podcast exists to diversify the menopause space. And I speak up because I want to be the face that people see, that they might listen to, whether it's on taking MHT, whether it's about holistic practices, whether it's about looking after ourselves, whether it's actual knowledge around, the different remedies and care that you can take, but also recognizing that menopause and our care is so crucial. And yet it is so difficult sometimes to be taken seriously, you know. 1 in 3 women spend, this is from the Menopause Mandate Survey, spend between £100 and £500 a year managing symptoms. It shouldn't come with a price tag. This shouldn't be. And when we look at the fact that within statistics, black women can often be on a lower socio-economic scale for all sorts of reasons, often not, definitely not, to do with personal reasons, then that money isn't there, you know. So I really feel that my voice and the voice of the podcast and the voices of other people of colour who are speaking up is really important in getting people to understand that one, they're not alone. Two, there are people to listen to them. And three, workplaces need to take this seriously because they are losing people. They are losing women at the rate of knots because it just becomes too much. And if you're at work every day, maybe haven't had good sleep, so you're not able to make decent decisions. Maybe you're in a meeting and you've been asked to present something and you can't remember it and you're embarrassed. Maybe you're, disappearing and crying in the toilet and you can't be found and people are thinking, well, why isn't she at her desk doing her job? There are so many ways that people in the workplace can not only help one another, but also help the swathes of menopausal women, particularly women of colour, particularly the diversity within the space, that will help the workspace become somewhere that is vibrant and, and encouraging and positive and make people want to go there, frankly,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
That was a long answer.
No, I know you've answered a few of my questions. It's super, super useful. super helpful. And just to go back a couple of points you said,
Yeah,
I
sure,
never
sure.
thought you were a podcaster. I could very easily see you as a podcaster. I've listened to your podcast. It's fantastic. I
Thank
want to
you.
remind the audience to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask Karen questions throughout. We will have a section at the end where we can ask Karen questions directly.
Great.
My next question for you, Karen, is you mentioned the importance of organizations recognizing the different experiences of
Mhm.
menopause in the workplace. And I think a lot of organizations have started to do that, but often will stop at either posters or awareness days. So, from your experience, why isn't that enough? And what are some of the actions that leaders here today could take tomorrow to move from awareness to impact?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a tick box exercise, isn't it? It's performative. We're over that. We see through that, you know. Yes, it's great to see a poster. Yes, it's nice to see yourself recognized visually. But I think we all know that actually it needs to go much deeper. I remember teaching, we used to before, way before emails, there was a time when we had a lot of hard copy stuff, things like anti-bullying statements and anti-racist statements. And it's like you get together, you make the statement, and then it goes in a drawer. And then it only comes out when we need to, reference it or a parent wants to look at it. And I think I'm probably dropping a few schools in it, but I'll say it now. I think that for the workplace, what's important is to speak to your workforce. Speak to the people who are experiencing menopause, talk to them. It's all very well having senior managers from the top down saying, this is what we're going to do. Okay. But that doesn't make for a very positive workplace. So these workplace policies around being able to have time off to go to a health professional, appreciating that for most women, it takes a good year to get, our care in order and to get things right. For me personally, I took a couple of years. Um, I started MHT a few years ago within there's a 10-year window before it's not much point, I would say. However, I started when I was 59, 10 years from the time I first had my period to now. And actually, I wasn't going to. I didn't want to. But it took me, my point is it took me a while. And in that time, I would have needed time off. I would have needed support. I would have needed understanding. So I think the first thing employers do, yes, notice us. I think that's important. We tend to look for people who look like us, but actually, for a diverse workforce and a positive workforce, what's important is that you see that there are people who don't look like the people in senior management, and therefore their care needs to be taken in consideration. So the first thing I would say is speak to what do your workforce want? What do the people who are directly impacted by menopause? Because make no mistake, everybody is impacted by menopause. It's just that half of us will experience it. Do you see what I mean? But
Yeah.
if you're canvassing and you're speaking to and you're having small group meetings and you're really, if we feel listened to, we'll go to the ends of the earth for you.
Yep. Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Absolutely. We have a few questions coming through, and we have about 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we're answering. I know it flew by.
What?
I want to make sure that we're answering some audience questions. So the
Sure.
first question that we have for you is how can organizations make sure that they're hearing from all voices, not just those who are already confident and speaking up
Yeah.
about the menopause?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And it's about different approaches. If you send an email round and you ask people to fill in a survey, a lot of people aren't going to do that. You know, I think it's really important is using different methods. It might be a small group method. It might be going into an office. It might be an email. It might be word of mouth. It might be designating someone who is maybe a menopause friend or, a menopause advocate to walk around, actually put the walking in and speak to people, right, and visit people rather than just thinking, oh, I've sent an email and I've sent a follow-up email as per my email. People get emails all the time. Do you see? So
Yeah.
it's about looking at different ways to people learn in different ways as well. People take in information in different ways. So it's looking at different ways, whether it's in person, whether it's email, whether it's an event with, drinks and snacks, you know, at small group ways, walking around, all of these different ways will find different people at different times to get to your end goal.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Karen. And earlier you spoke about the first step that employers could take to start implementing more menopause support.
Mm.
But actually, even either tangentially or one step before that, what's the first step that employers can take to make menopause support feel more inclusive for
Yeah.
everyone, which is a
Yeah.
bit nuanced to the first question that you answered.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it goes basically back to what I said about finding different ways, different methods of approaching people. But also, for me, what's really important is that I am surrounded or I see people who have a commonality, and so I know that people put out surveys all the time. There are more and more surveys about menopause, but actually the same people, you're right, the same people are answering them. So that's why I go back to that personable approach, that personal approach, that ensuring that there, I don't know, maybe if there's an event that, how accessible is that event? Are you taking into consideration that someone might need childcare? Are you providing lunch if it's a lunchtime thing? Are you expecting people to, give up their time? Then make it interesting, but also tempting in a way, So I feel like it's really important that we ensure that I'm distracted. That we ensure that if you look at different ways and if you look at the different layers of how you can contact people, then retaining that and ensuring that people turn up becomes a lot easier. But I don't know, snacks work for me. I don't know about you.
Snacks always work. Snacks work for me too, always. Um, our next question, I'd love to know what gives Karen hope about how workplaces are changing the conversation around menopause right now.
Listen, I started talking about menopause a long time ago, but I started being in the public's eye, if you like, 5 years ago. And since then, so much has changed. So much has changed. Menopause feels like it's on everybody's lips, but we still have a long way to go. And we still have a long way to make it diverse as well. But the hope is because I've seen it happen in my lifetime. I want to get to another 5 years, 10 years' time, where it's just a given that there's going to be everybody's got a workplace policy and that it's people aren't embarrassed. There are still people who are embarrassed to say they're menopausal. People might not necessarily want people to know how old they are, for example. A lot of us people of my skin complexion look a lot younger than we actually are, and it's kind of cool that way. But actually that impacts if people know how old you are, whether you can progress within the workplace. So the hope is because I'm seeing it happen, particularly in the last year. Also, I have hope because I did it myself. I went from someone who was depressed to someone who is definitely thriving, and I've done that with the help of friends, but also by myself, and lots of different ways to do it. So I think there's a lot more resources out there now. I think keep your wits about you in terms of what you spend your money and making sure that is actually for you, but allow people to help you. Speak up. Surround yourself with friends who may encourage you to speak to someone at work. Workplaces get involved as well. But the hope is because I'm seeing it happen now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Karen. That's such a lovely place to leave us today. Thank you so much for your time. I found this conversation to be super helpful. Always a joy speaking with you, and
Oh,
we will
thank
speak
you.
to you soon.
Thank you very much. Gosh, it was quick. Thank you for having
It
me.
does fly by, doesn't it?
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. Perfect. I hope everybody enjoyed that conversation. I know I very much enjoyed it as well. Before we go into our next session, we wanted to hear directly from one of Pepe's users. In the first part of this user story, this user will share what symptoms they experienced going through the menopause and the impact that it had on their working life.
My name is Emma. I'm 52 years old and I live in Basildon in Essex, and I'm going through the menopause. When menopause first came knocking, I didn't notice it at first. Just a few little things: forgetting a word mid-sentence, struggling to fall asleep, spots and acne, and some twitchy legs. And this strange slow burn of irritability that came out of nowhere. I thought I was tired, I thought I was stressed, or both. Then came the hot flashes and unpredictability of periods. One minute I'd be leading a meeting, totally in control, and the next, bam, I was sweating like I'd run a marathon with heels and in a blazer. I am now that woman that carries a fan in my bag. But the hardest part is the brain fog for me. I'd lose my train of thought mid-presentation. Notes in front of me, slides behind me, and still I'd draw a blank. And when your job relies on you being sharp, articulate, and unflappable, the anxious thoughts, the second guessing, the double checking yourself, and the feelings around lack of confidence, that hits hard. I remember thinking, is this just aging, or is something really wrong with me? Turns out it was menopause. It had crept in quietly, slowly, rewriting the way my body and mind showed up for me each day. Recognising the signs was the first step. Owning them, that was the second. This is not weakness, but a transition. And like every transition, it is something we can navigate together. My confidence started to feel conditional, contingent on whether or not my body decided to surprise me that day. And that was the confusing part. There was no longer a pattern. Periods that had been once predictable became chaotic. Heavy 1 month and non-existent the next. It was like my body was running its own secret schedule and I wasn't on the invite list. At work, I found myself thinking less about performance and more about damage control. What to wear, where to sit, how long could I stay in a meeting without worrying. It wasn't just physical, it was a mental load, constant, low level, and often quite draining. Eventually, I learnt this was something not to hide or apologise for, but something to understand. Because the more we share, the less isolated we feel, even in the boardroom and even in white trousers.
So that is part one of our user story. In a couple minutes time, we'll tune in for part two. But before we do that, our next session is about turning managers into your front line of action. Awareness days are great, but what really makes the difference is how managers respond in a one-on-one, a team meeting, or even a performance review. That's where culture is built. And that's why I'm handing it over to Pepe's CEO, Dr. Merdula Poor, and Deborah Garlick, founder and owner of Hempicked, for a live coaching session on the 5 things that every manager can do right now to get ahead and support the individual as a whole. Hempicked has been a partner of Pepe's for many years, providing workplace training, policy support, and running the Menopause and Menstruation Friendly Employer Awards. So welcome back to the screen, Radulapur, and welcome, Deborah. It's so lovely to see you.
Thank you very much. And what powerful words they were. I think that was got me a little bit choked up, didn't it, you, Merdula?
Absolutely, Deborah. It's such a pleasure to have you. And thank you, Danielle. Let's get straight into it. So we are going to be talking through 5 steps. And let's start with number 1. I think it sets the tone for everything else. Thinking proactively. The reality is that symptoms of perimenopause can begin as early as someone's mid-30s. That means that if we're only waiting till people are in crisis to act, we're already too late. And this is where the smartest employers are getting ahead. They're not waiting for performance issues or absence spikes to show up on a dashboard. They're starting early, normalizing the conversation, and giving people the tools to stay at their best before symptoms ever reach breaking point. Now, employees need to know where to go for support, the information, the clinical care, the lifestyle tools that actually make a difference to their symptoms. And Deborah, I mean, we work both together in various organizations and you work in a range of others. When it comes to managers, what can they do to make sure that their people are supported proactively before they reach crisis point?
Great question. And I think the proactively is absolutely key. And I really mean it when I say everybody needs to watch those videos, don't they? Because line managers can make a huge difference. But we don't know what we don't know, do we, Radula? Knowledge is absolutely key in this because managers, as you say, do actually help change the culture. But many don't know much about menopause at all. And when they do know about menopause, whether it's the ages, stages, symptoms, and what would help somebody that was experiencing the menopause, that's absolutely key. That's what helps them change their minds around the experience. And I think I'd start with saying, is the organisation menopause friendly? Many organisations now have policies. Many are already starting to make put training in place, but actually asking themselves that question. I would say probably the first thing I'd do is go to your intranet right now, go to your search bar, punch in the word menopause and see what comes up. Because your organisation might already be taking action and you might not know about it. And I would say if nothing comes up, then I would encourage leaders to say, well, okay, then if you don't do this already, what can you do to make that change, to lead that change in your organisation?
Yeah, brilliant. And as you say, you know, line managers can make or break the culture. So sort of supporting that culture of proactive care and people needing to make sure that they are looking after their health. I mean, obviously, we're not asking people necessarily to have to identify people who may have menopause, but be receptive to that conversation and respond appropriately. So step 2 is looking at the whole picture. So taking that holistic support. So menopause doesn't mean just hot flushes or poor sleep. It can affect the whole person, their energy, their nutrition, mood. Karen was just describing some of the ways that it manifests for her, their ability for movement, as well as the hormonal fluctuations. And this is where lifestyle medicine, and which is the theme of this year's World Menopause Day, can make a really huge difference. Small changes in diet, movement, sleep, stress management, all backed by clinical support, can transform how people feel. It can take a little bit of time, of course, but you know, it can be really radical how much of a difference there is. Now, I've seen employers take a wraparound approach with clinicians plus workshops on nutrition, fitness, mental health. And the result is definitely fewer symptoms, but also more confidence, better performance, stronger, and ultimately stronger retention when people feel like they know what's going on and they have some control back. And it's never one size fits all. You know, what works for you in your 20s, 30s won't feel the same in your 40s and 50s. I know I'm suffering from a bit of excess weightlifting. The best employers do give people space to find out what works for them. So, I mean, again, from the manager's perspective, Deborah, how can they recognize that menopause is about the whole person and bring that into their everyday support? What kind of things could they do?
Well, I would go back, of course, to the awareness and the understanding. That is absolutely essential. And as we heard in that video, you know, not making assumptions. Everybody thinks it's all about hot flushes, don't they? Or so many people think it's all about hot flushes. And as you say, we're all different in our experience, how we might experience menopause, the different symptoms, our own personal medical history, and how we might want to manage our menopause. And I might be a little bit controversial here and say whether or not we want to talk about it, because not everybody does. So when it comes to leaders, I would say that, you know, appreciation of that whole person from the manager's perspective, how they recognize that whole person. And we're all very appreciative of this in this theme. And I would say, yes, it's great to see how many employers are actually taking well-being more seriously now. And rather than just signposting to HR or occupational health, thinking about their role and responsibility in supporting people. So I love the fact that so many employers are out talking about menopause, but this has got to be something that's built into the day-to-day. Well-being days work really well. That lifestyle education, whether it's healthy foods in the canteen with some call out cards around what you can do and nutrition values, etc. But we're also seeing organizations doing things like yoga days in the work, mindfulness, walking meetings are great. I don't know, do you do those, Medulla? I don't know if everybody's getting involved with those, but instead of just sitting at your desk or going into a meeting room, going for a walk for a meeting or a lunchtime walk, they can make a huge amount of difference. But thinking about that video that we just watched there, what we heard that individual saying was that they weren't thinking about their own performance, that they were thinking about how can you manage this? How long can I sit in this meeting room? Where might I be sitting? But that appreciation for the whole and appreciating it's not just physical symptoms, it's psychological symptoms. And that's what we hear from so many people, that it's the psychological symptoms. And with it come this downward spiral and lacking in confidence. And actually, at the extreme, I think that's where so many people get to the point of thinking about leaving or actually leaving. So, what managers can do there is appreciate what great communication, good catch ups will be, understanding that individual, because we hear people saying sometimes, I must be terrible at my job. And their line managers are blissfully unaware that anything is happening because they've not identified it, but it's what the individual is thinking, is feeling in that moment. So making sure you've got those one-to-one catch-ups and that you're keeping your eye on what's actually going on for individuals.
100%. And that takes us the psychological symptoms we hear time and again, time and again. And actually, we've also done some research on it. So which actually takes us nicely into step 3, which is how do you actually go about creating those safe spaces which give people the chance, if they want to talk about their menopause symptoms, but also to sort of not have that additional psychological pressure of I'm not performing, I'm about to be sacked, etc., etc.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things that managers can do is create a safe space where people feel able to bring the menopause into the conversation if they want to, where people can feel supportive, access that support. And research does show that it actually improves outcomes. So we published a paper in 2024 in Maturitas with nearly 12,000 working women, and they had engaged with PEPI's personalized menopause support, and they not only saw a significant reduction in symptoms, but also reported far less work impairment over time. And that's the link. When they can open up and access support, they stay engaged and stay in work and sort of take back some of that control and their choice, exactly as you said, Deborah, on how they want to manage their menopause. And sometimes it's the smallest shifts that make the biggest difference. I mean, I've seen managers who start a one-to-one with a simple, how are you really? Which can, help build trust or make somebody feel safe enough to share. But for others, even starting that conversation feels impossible, and that's why having somebody to prepare with, whether that's a clinician, a coach, peer support network, can be absolutely invaluable. What, from your perspective, Deborah, what are you seeing the practical things that managers can do, be that in a one-to-one setting, in a team setting, more broadly within the organization, to create and support those safe spaces so that people feel comfortable?
And I'm going to say the most powerful thing that any leader or manager can do is lead by example. Understand that or demonstrate that they understand menopause. Because if you think about the individual who may or may not be aware that they're experiencing the menopause, just doesn't want to start the conversation or be seen to be starting the conversation first. If you can get a line manager or a leader talking about maybe after they come off these sessions with the Peppy team that's saying, actually, I went to a great session today, learned so much about menopause, really want to help anybody in our organisation that might be experiencing this. So if anybody wants to talk to me, I'm here. So if they can lead by example, that enables people to come forward, whether it's in a private setting or maybe in a team meeting, that they can open up that conversation and highlight from the previous search on the internet what's available in their own organisation, whether that is a policy, whether that's the signposting, and ensuring that they know where that support is. Not everybody's going to need support. For some people, it's just being able to have the relief of saying, just bear with me, I'm having a day, without feeling judged. But for others, do you have peppy support in your organisation? If somebody's struggling, make sure that they've seen it. I'd say meet people where they are too. Because appreciating that we won't all necessarily want to talk about it, it takes time to normalize this conversation and move it from a taboo, a stigma, to an everyday conversation. So, if somebody wants to have a conversation, or you want to say, have a conversation with me in a private room, one-to-one, here's my diary, let's have a coffee, let's have a chat. So line managers can do so much in this space.
Absolutely. And we've all had those conversations at some point in our career where we sort of go with a lot of emotional anticipation into a line manager conversation. And sometimes it goes wonderfully, you feel reassured and relaxed. And so if that's not dealt with well, though, and that takes us to step 4, responding into the moment, that can just create sort of amplify the angst, and on both sides, for the employee who doesn't feel like they've been heard, or they've had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, to the manager who's like, I don't know how to deal with that situation or this topic. And these conversations just don't wait for a perfect setting, do they? So they can come up sort of anywhere. But when a manager is caught off guard at the moment, what's the simplest thing they can do to respond with confidence, keep that safe space, and keep the conversation moving in the right direction?
I'd say, first of all, take a pause, because you're right, actually, not all line managers know a lot about menopause, and it could be any sort of sensitive conversation. So take a pause, listen, appreciate that that individual might have had to have built up a certain amount of courage and bravery to start having this conversation. So listening is very, very powerful, as you say, so people know that they've been heard. Ask open questions, don't make assumptions. Give people the time and space to share what they're comfortable with at that time. And understanding and empathy, I think, is absolutely key. But also being if sort of, I won't say problem solving, but explore together what will help that individual. Because we're all unique in this, and it might be that that individual will say, well, actually, if I could work from home one day a week, or if I could start in a later shift, or if I could do this, or if I could do that, it would really help. So get an action plan together if you can. Don't call it an action plan, but get some ideas together on what would really help and how you can support that individual, and keep that conversation going, because some things that you put in place might work, might not. But maybe you have a follow-up the following week, just to say, how are you getting on? How's it working for you? Is there anything else that we can do? And I would say, make sure that you appreciate that confidentiality is key in this. Some people might want to talk about it openly if they've made reasonable adjustments. Others might say, can we not right now?
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, because often when these conversations start in workplace, there is a slightly panicked reaction from line managers if somebody comes and talk to me. And your advice, as you say, holds in a lot of situations. You don't have to be the full expert to help be a supportive line manager and help somebody navigate that part of time in your life.
Just human conversations, isn't it, Mardula?
Absolutely. And now to come, step 5, this is something that we've been talking a lot about together, Deborah, getting ahead of the legislation. So the Employment Rights Bill, as we said earlier in the event, is on its way for employers with more than 250 staff. It will soon be a legal requirement for menopause action plans, but that's really just the baseline, isn't it? So the best employers aren't waiting to be told, they're getting their managers ready, building their culture to be proud of, and making sure that, showing that the business case does stack up. So, what's, from your perspective, and you're obviously talking to loads of organizations of all types and across the country and internationally, what's the difference between waiting for the law to land and acting now? And what risks do employers take if they do hold off, and what can they gain by moving first?
And I'm just going to say who cares wins on this one, because this is the Employment Rights Bill is likely to go to the House of Lords for vote on the 28th of October. So it's not coming, it's there. It will soon. I'm reasonably confident that it'll go for royal assent. But actually, you're right. Great employers don't wait to comply. They're already ahead. They're already thinking about what they can do to support their people being at their best at work. And, if we want to be controversial about it, who wants to work for an employer who only considers their well-being when it's law? We want to work for employers who understand that if you've got my back, if I hit a bump in the road, then I'll be loyal. It'll improve my performance. I'm much more likely to stay here and I'm much more likely to be at my best. So finishing on the who cares wins, Mridula.
And what a brilliant way to point to end on. Thank you so much, Deborah. And it's always a pleasure. So there you have it, guys. Act early, know the basics, create safe spaces, respond in the moment, and prepare for legislations. 5 very, very practical things that managers and leaders in your organizations can do right now. And we'll hand over now, I know we're running a little late, to Danielle, who is hosting our next panel session.
Thank you so much, Deborah and Mridula. Super powerful tactical takeaways for managers. So really appreciate all that you have shared. We're going to shift gears now and look at the bigger picture, because we know that smart employers know menopause support isn't just about one symptom or one policy. It's about the whole person. That's why we've brought together Peppy's wonderful clinical specialists in menopause, nutrition, fitness, and lifestyle medicine. They're here to show you how wraparound care can transform workplace support, and more importantly, to give you practical actions that you can take to protect your people, boost retention, and strengthen culture. So please join me in welcoming Janet Wingfield, Martin Gibson, and Danielle Quinsons, chaired by our Director of Clinical Services, Laura Carter-Penman.
Lovely. Thank you, Danielle, and welcome to everybody. Really looking forward to hosting this session. As Danielle said, I'm Laura. I'm the Director of Clinical Services, and I have with me Daniel, Janet, and Martin, and I will let them introduce themselves. So, Daniel, we can start with you.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm Daniel, the nutrition practitioner here at Peppy.
Hi everyone, I'm Martin. I'm the senior fitness practitioner here at Peppy.
Hello everybody, I'm Janet Wingfield and I'm the menopause lead here at Peppy.
Lovely, thank you, and welcome, guys. So we've got a speedy session to get through here. So I'd like to start with asking Janet, when we talk about wraparound care and the menopause, what does that actually mean, and what does it mean for workplaces?
It means moving away from the symptom treatment to whole person care, as Danielle mentioned just now, actually. It's about getting the foundations right first, so diet and lifestyle, exercise, sleep and stress management, and mental well-being, and then adding a wraparound clinical support and work-based flexibility. It's really important because 50% of the workforce are women. And around the menopause transition, of course, it can span decades of our working lives. When we get it right, though, we not only retain the experienced, skilled women, we increase the loyalty and commitment of those women. That strengthens the employer's reputation, which of course then strengthens the ability to attract more top talent.
Janet, and sticking with you, Janet, from your clinical experience, what's one of the biggest challenges that employees face during the menopause that employees are crying out for support with?
Well, women struggle in silence, don't they, Laura, because of their fear that they're going to be seen as less capable or that it's going to damage their careers. They don't speak up until they're in real crisis, and that's the problem, because by the time they reach this point, their symptoms have already taken a huge, serious toll on them. So we need to normalise those conversations. We need to make support visible, because this helps women to then reach out before those symptoms spiral, which of course then protects both their well-being and their performance at work. And it also keeps them thriving instead of quietly planning their exit.
Lovely, thank you, Janet. Now we're going on to some of the other things we want to talk about. So, Martin, we want to talk to you a bit about movement. We know how important it is in menopause, but obviously one of the things that's probably the first thing to go when menopause symptoms hit. So what's your advice on how we can keep women moving?
Well, physical activity and exercise plays multiple roles to prepare for menopause, as well as throughout and obviously beyond. In particular, it can really help support things like symptoms from anything from weight management to enhancing sleep. One of the most specific symptoms we get asked a lot about here at Peppy is joint and muscular pain, and through specific movements, modes of exercise, corrective exercise, we're able to support our users not only in reducing the severity of those symptoms, but also with their long-term health as well.
Thank you. And moving on to you, Daniel, again, nutrition plays such an important part. Can you explain a little bit about why, but also how employers can take that into the workplace, again, to support their teams?
Yeah, our diet is how we fuel our body and provide all those essential nutrients, so for us to function at our best. So not only is diet going to have an impact on things like energy levels throughout the day, but it's also going to impact mood, it's going to impact productivity, and even things like sick days. So I think some ways an employer can support their employees is to make healthy food options available and easily accessible. So it's a little bit easier to make those healthier choices. And also, we can promote healthy eating in the workplace as well. So it could be simple things like having healthy snacks available. So it could be like fruits in eating places that you can also promote or encourage sharing of healthy recipes, or even have things like healthy bake-offs to encourage healthier eating, just to give people ideas.
That's great. Thank you, Daniel. So Janet, I'm going to come back to you really. You've all talked a bit about the picture here, but Janet, what does that joined up wraparound care actually mean?
It's really simple, I think, Laura. When we bring all of the elements together, we see transformation for these women. If I can take just a second to think about a woman that's got flushes and hot sweats. So at Peppy, our menopause practitioners would explore the root cause of those symptoms, but at the same time, our fitness and nutrition team would provide sleep supportive nutrition and movement strategies, for instance. And our healthy minds team might help that same woman explore that sleep anxiety. And this way, every factor is addressed simultaneously. So we really do see that holistic wraparound care. And of course, I think it's also important to mention that we don't just support the women. As we mentioned earlier, we're educating and supporting partners and managers too, so that when we connect everything, these women go from struggling to thriving, and then we keep those brilliant people instead of losing them.
Lovely. And I think that's where that all comes back round to that sort of retention on investment point. We know that actually it's not just about people not being at work. It's about those people that are at work being more productive and keeping that talent. We all know the cost of hiring new talent and what that looks like and the training that goes with that. And we also, from the points that Daniel and Martin were making as well, how valued you feel if your workplace are putting in some healthy options or giving you time for that movement. We know the balance that and the joy that brings to the workplace, and again makes you feel valued and makes you feel heard. And I think one of the things we get a lot of feedback on is that people finally feel heard when they come to Peppy, and they finally feel they've got solutions. And as we said, it's not just clinical solutions, it's the movement, it's the healthy minds, it's the healthy eating, it's the full wraparound support that we get there.
Absolutely. It's those having those foundations in place and then building on everything else. Yeah.
Lovely. So now and we're going to have a little look at, if you could give, we're going to do a bit of a quick fire round of, answers of, we've got HR leaders on this call, and they're going to be wanting to know how they can make a difference. So what we want is some quick fire answers. What would there be your sort of one takeaway of what they would be? What would be the one thing, if they could do it tomorrow, that they should do?
For me, that would be ask for feedback. Send out a simple anonymous survey asking what challenges are you facing and what support would be most helpful.
Thank you. And Martin?
I think is to try and look at how we can incorporate more movement throughout the day. So thinking about, can we get some movement friendly breaks into the day, whether that is, 2 or 3 minutes every sort of hour or so, just to get up and move, or whether it's to try and actively encourage people to take their lunch break and get outside and do some movement, whether it's going for a walk or doing some form of exercise. And and make it as part of our normal working day and not exceptional.
No, that's great. We've done some things where, if you're on a call and you don't actually need to be in front of your computer, can you take that call while you're out on a walk, getting out in that fresh air, that just take that moment to actually make it normal to get away from your desk, because it's too easy to be sat in front of that computer all that time. So like you say, making that normal so that it's the right thing for people to do. And Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say try to make healthy options easily accessible. So when we're busy or under stress, we often make food choices based off of convenience rather than health. If the only healthy snack or meal option requires a lot of extra effort, like say you have to walk very far, or you have to bring it from home, while a less healthy option is right in front of us, most people will naturally choose what's easiest. So I would say, if healthy options are just as convenient or even more accessible, it becomes a lot easier for employees to make healthier choices without, the extra effort. So, small environmental changes like, that could help make a big difference in overall well-being and just energy levels at work, just having those options really easily accessible.
Lovely. Well, thank you guys. And I hope everybody's found that session useful and they've got some key takeaways there. So thank you very much for joining us. And I will be handing back over to Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate everybody from our clinical team joining us. It's always such a pleasure anytime I get to be in conversation with you all. So thank you. Some super helpful and interesting insights there. We're now going to go back to our Peppy user that we saw a couple of sessions ago. And in this second chapter, they will tell us what support they received and the difference that it made in their career and their well-being.
It wasn't until I found support, real honest conversations, sharing experience and evidence-based information. Knowing what was happening gave me back a sense of control. There felt like an unspoken pressure to keep it hidden, to carry on as normal when nothing about my body or mind felt normal anymore. This changed when I accessed support through Peppy. Suddenly, I had someone to talk to who just got it. I had clinical guidance, practical advice, and reassurance that this was not just all in my head, it was manageable. I learned how to navigate my symptoms, treat with treatment options and lifestyle changes. Just having some validation that my experience was real, I wasn't alone, made a world of difference. That support gave me confidence, it gave me clarity, and it gave me language to talk to my manager, to explain what I needed and to stop hiding. What I want employers to understand is that menopause is not weakness. It's not inconvenience, and it's not just a woman's issue. It's a workplace issue, not just a personal one. Because when employees feel supported through menopause, they stay, they thrive, they bring their full experience and energy back into the room. This is not special treatment. It doesn't mean huge changes, just awareness, flexibility, and access to the right resources can transform someone's working life. It helped me back to myself, back to my career that I'd worked so hard to build, and the space to manage my health without judgment or career penalty. Supporting people through menopause is part of building a genuinely inclusive and age-diverse workplace.
Wonderful. We will hear part 3 of our user's story at the end of today's session. Now let's turn to what it looks like when employers get ahead, because we know that the smartest leaders aren't waiting for problems to escalate or legislation to catch up. They are already building support that keeps people thriving and businesses strong. One standout example is British Airways. Their menopause employee resource group is just helping women feel supported, which is amazing, but it's also about boosting retention, strengthening culture, and proving the ROI of early action. It's living proof that proactive care pays off. I am so delighted to introduce Julika Stoneman, airline customer service agent and ERG lead at BA. She'll share how her ERG got started, the initiatives that they rolled out, and the impact that they're seeing across the whole organization. The session will be led by Grace, our head of customer success at Peppy.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for having us today. Just whilst we get a few technical things sorted out, I'm just going to give you a quick bit of background about the session. So, as Danielle mentioned, I'm joined by Jalika, who is the Meno Friends lead at BA. So Jalika was part of the setup for the Meno Friends, and I think Jalika, can you hear us now? Okay. Okay, sorry everybody, we're just having a couple of technical difficulties. But whilst we get that sorted, I'll just continue my background. So Jalika was part of the Meno Friends, which is the employee resource group at British Airways. And there's lots of kind of insights that we're hoping to share with you from Jalika today. But again, just on that background, I know that Jalika has worked very, very hard to get this set up and to be the voice of thousands of women at British Airways to ensure that they're being supported on their menopause journey. So one of the things, I think you're on sound now, Jalika.
I am. Sorry.
No problem. But one of the things I know that you've worked very closely doing is both with Peppy and Hempicked. So for everyone on the audience today, you've heard from Hempicked, and obviously you know a lot about Peppy. So Jalika, let's start at the beginning before we get into that. What sparked the idea to get you to set up the menopause ERG, and how did you get ahead of the curve in making it happen?
So basically, when I was going through the perimenopause, I didn't know it was the perimenopause. I felt lonely, I felt isolated, and I thought, if I feel like this, there must be other women feeling the same. So Angie McDonald, our co-chair of Meno Friends, felt the same. So we thought we needed to do something about it. Approached the management and decided to get an appropriate time and space for these women to come together to share stories. And it snowballed from there because there was a really big demand.
I mean, that's fantastic. Like you say, you knew there was a demand, and obviously speaking to management and them giving you the freedom to set this up is fantastic. But what other kind of activities and initiatives did you deliver to really support colleagues before symptoms really became a barrier to them doing their everyday work?
So we run cafes once a month, every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month, so everybody knows when they are. We handed out symptom checkers. We made ourselves available. We used to go around at break times, talking to people during work. We'd been asking them. So we just let people know we were there all the time to speak to us and to understand what the perimenopause was, so they could see what was coming and get help beforehand.
Amazing. And obviously, we all know new initiatives come with their hurdles. I think everyone, you know, in our experience, we try and implement things, and things do kind of come as challenges. So what challenges did you see, and what things did you face along the way that you thought, oh, this is really difficult, but how did you keep momentum?
I think with us, because of the dynamic and diversity of British Airways, we're a worldwide operation. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, constantly going. So I think it was finding ways around making ourselves available all the time when anybody ever needs us. And because the demand was so high, it was the passion between Angie and Di and Maria and everybody that kept saying, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for getting the ball rolling and talking. We just made sure at every opportunity we were talking about it.
Amazing. And I think you mentioned a few of your colleagues there. That really helps, doesn't it, to have that colleague buy-in. But you've also mentioned managers. So you went to managers with this idea. And how important was that leadership buy-in and engaging colleagues at all levels to really make this a success?
So peer-to-peer is great because people know it's from the ground up. But when you get management buy-in, you're now getting it from both levels, so people can understand the listening, the understanding, and the willing to do something about it. So that understanding from management, Sean, amazing, Lisa, amazing. And it helps us to know that we're being supported as we continue.
Yeah, and like you say, if you're being supported, you want to stay in the workplace, don't you? You want to work for an employer that supports you. So when we actually look at that impact then, what's changed for your colleagues and yourself and for the culture, not only for you guys going to work every day, but also for British Airways as a business?
So I think now colleagues know that there's somebody to go to. We're putting managers on training courses. We've got information everywhere. So they know they're not on their own. They know if they can speak to somebody, that it's not put up, shut up or leave, that they can be helped, they can be supported, they can be guided to enjoy and thrive at their time with British Airways.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? You want people to enjoy the work. You want them to come to work feeling supported and feeling happy. And we at Peppy often talk about the cost of inaction. So from your perspective, what risks do you think that BA would have faced if you hadn't have acted early?
Well, one of our colleagues at one of our cafes said she left British Airways when she was perimenopausal because there was no support and she didn't know what to do. And she said, if this had been here and we were with Peppy at the time, she said, I would not have left. So for one person to say they wouldn't leave the company, and second of all, one of our cabin crew said literally she was on her knees and the support from Peppy brought her back. And that's two people, and that's amazing. And this ripple effect is going on and on. So inactivity, you're losing knowledge, power, experience, and also investment.
Yeah.
You want return on your investment. So if you look after your employees, you will get that back in droves.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I've heard those stories and they're amazing and they always really move us. But you're right, we want to invest in our people so that the business can thrive as well. And just a reminder, we will have a couple of questions at the end if anyone does have any questions for Jalika. But another one from me. So what would you say is the return on investment? So where have you really seen tangible business benefits from this proactive approach?
I think amongst colleagues, there's a strengthening. Actually, middle-aged women are a fantastic workforce to have on your team. I can't sing about middle-aged women enough. And when you know you've got colleagues that'll help support you and the management, you want to stay with that company. You want to feel actually they want me here. So you want to stay. So you don't want to go to anybody else. So I'm not a manager. I'm not in charge of finance, but without using a harsh phrase, it ain't rocket science. You look after your staff, you make them feel wanted, and they will stay and look after your company for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all the kind of HR and benefits leaders who are here, who are thinking, we really need this, what would you say your top piece of advice for starting an employee resource group or Meno Friends, as BA like to call it, or a similar initiative?
Just start the conversation. It's not difficult. Whether you just have a coffee morning and it's about the menopause, just start the conversation because your employees will help you the way that you need to go forward. They'll dictate what they need and what help they want. So just start the conversation and then go from there because it'll snowball before you know it.
Amazing. And if there is just one action that they could just do tomorrow, so Friday, one action on their to-do list, just to really get, the beginning started, what would you recommend?
I would say look at the financial cost to the sectors if they don't do anything that's going to affect them. And if the financial loss of these employees don't push them to look after them, just think about the well-being, the productivity that these colleagues can bring to your environment.
Yeah, I mean, we say that quite a lot from a Peppy perspective as well. If you can collect any data or insight, or like we said, return on investment, that definitely helps with that manager and buy-in as well. So we're going to turn to the audience for some questions now. So just to kick us off then, we've kind of mentioned advice that you would give to someone straight away, so open up that conversation.
Yeah.
But to really get the employment resource group started, is there any kind of top tricks and tips that you did to get that off the ground?
To be quite honest, it was driven by such passion and desperation to think it's not just us, and we wanted to help other women in this situation. And I know it's basic, but you just start the conversation. You see your workforce of a certain age, and you just say, "We want to help. How can we help? What can we do?" and know it. When you hear that, what can we do to help? It's really, really powerful. Don't underestimate those small words. How can we help is an amazing thing to hear from your HR and your management.
And I imagine that you may have seen some resistance to people talking. Not everyone feels comfortable about talking about their health, or particularly menopause in the workplace. So how did you encourage colleagues to really open up and actually get involved?
Actually, do you know, this comes across a lot because some cultures are very quiet and aren't open about it, but they come on, there's always people that are willing to talk about it. So they come and listen. And then what they'll do, they'll come to you on a one-to-one. So you just keep the conversation going, and you say people are really quiet, don't want to open up, but actually, do you know what they do? Because it's been so quiet for so long, they've now got this space to talk about it. And just saying the words out loud that there's something wrong, and somebody going, it's a thing and we can help, is really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely what we see with some clients, other clients we work with as well. Come along and you'll see over time, people naturally feel more comfortable, and they might be pushed out of their comfort zone, but eventually they'll get there and they'll find that right support channels. And something that, for British Airways, you're everywhere.
Yeah.
So really getting that message out to all of your employees that maybe aren't all in one location and, have different shift patterns. How did you get over some of those hurdles and challenges?
So obviously we have a large amount of cabin crew, and they have their own like Facebook and their WhatsApp. So we put posters in the toilets there. So every time they're at Heathrow and in the base, they can see this on the boat. So all the Peppy stuff is everywhere. So we see the link for Peppy. And they have conversations on board. We leave the cards, we leave the Peppy cards and the Men Friends cards everywhere. And I know I keep going back to it, but because the conversation has been closed for so long, we have so many women of a certain age, these conversations that they've been held in for so long, people are desperate to talk about it actually. And so the logistics has been difficult, but Peppy are coming through for us next year. So it's not been as difficult as you think.
Yeah, and I'm glad you've said that. I know we've had a few Peppy team members on the road coming out to see you guys and helping with some of those Meno cafes that you mentioned as well. So yeah, really, really appreciate you kind of mentioned that. The final question that I just want to ask from the audience, sorry. We mentioned manager buy-ins. Is there any particular kind of trainings or things that you've had to do to really get managers talking about this more comfortably?
I think obviously it's great that we've had Handpicked on board and they put packages together for us, and we've been on the training courses to give us the tools to do the job. But also when we've sat down and had conversations with managers to say, we are here to help you, to help your team to be a better manager, they're manager of people, and there's some resistance because of ignorance, not because they don't want to help, but they don't understand it's more than a hot flush and it's more than a bit of brain fog. And also we've had a lot of men that are now coming to us because they need help for the partners. So the men, I have to say, the men are such a big part of this, and getting support for men has been crucial. And I've just got to say, shout out to the Peppy nurses. I cannot tell you the value of having the Peppy nurses at the cafes. It's been fantastic. It's just been amazing. And that, having access to a specialist nurse in your workplace, I cannot tell you, it's unbelievable. And that'd be the one thing that I'd do. Get Peppy, get to your place, let your colleagues see that nurse is here, because they'll never get to see a doctor that understands what's going on. So that's the first piece of advice I'd say.
I promise everyone we didn't pay her to say that,
No,
but thank you. I've also one more question. Sorry, something came in from the audience and I want to make sure we are covering it. Then I will let you go. Someone said they're finding it difficult to get the buy-in from senior leadership teams and HR. Is there any useful tips on getting more support from them? Their menopause group is completely run by volunteers at the moment and they don't have that buy-in.
I would look at financial, almost like do a business proposition, look at some of the financial statistics about what company loses, and also potential court cases due to inactivity from employees. So if they're not buying in because they want to look after menopause colleagues, put a business case, show them the money, show them the loss of money, and show them the legal stance that they need to start taking. And you might find a change in approach from them.
Yeah, there's so much research and data out there. And I think, like you say, put those numbers together and really put your business case forward. Thank you so much, Shalika. It's been a pleasure to chat with you as always. I'm going to hand back over to Danielle for the last bit of the session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you, Julika. So wonderful to hear what you and the team at BA have done with your Meno friends. So really appreciate you joining us today. To close our user's journey, we wanted to share the final chapter of how they are doing today and the results of receiving the right support.
Real honest conversations.
We'll be up and running in just a moment. We made it to the last session before there was a technical difficulty. Hold on just one moment. Otherwise, we can circulate it after this session.
I found support, real honest conversations, sharing experience and evidence-based information. Knowing what was happening gave me back a sense of control. There felt like an unspoken pressure to keep it hidden, to carry on as normal when nothing about my body or mind felt normal anymore. This changed when I accessed support through Peppy. Suddenly, I had someone to talk to who just got it. I had clinical guidance, practical advice, and reassurance that this was not just all in my head, it was manageable. I learned how to navigate my symptoms, treat with treatment options and lifestyle changes. Just having some validation that my experience was real, I wasn't alone, made a world of difference. That support gave me confidence, it gave me clarity, and it gave me language to talk to my manager, to explain what I needed and to stop hiding. What I want employers to understand is that menopause is not weakness, it's not inconvenience, and it's not just a woman's issue. It's a workplace issue, not just a personal one. Because when employees feel supported through menopause, they stay, they thrive, they bring their full experience and energy back into the room. This is not special treatment. It doesn't mean huge changes, just awareness, flexibility, and access to the right resources can transform someone's working life. It helped me back to myself, back to my career that I'd worked so hard to build, and the space to manage my health without judgment or career penalty. Supporting people through menopause is part of building a genuinely inclusive and age-diverse workplace.
Wonderful. It's stories like this that make me love working at Peppy. It really brings to life the impact on the end user. So I hope you all enjoyed that user story and the rest of today's session as much as we've enjoyed having you here. To close us out, we want to ask one final poll to follow up on the poll that was asked earlier today. What action will you be taking away from this event to implement in the next 30 days? Option 1, train managers. Option 2, start or scale an ERG. Option 3, build the ROI case for leadership. And Option 4, launch and refresh proactive menopause support. Give you all just a moment to answer. Okay. So as we can see, it sounds like the majority of the group off the back of today's session will be launching and refreshing proactive menopause support. And we really hope that there are tactical tips that you're able to take from today's session and implement after today. So we've heard the human stories, the business case, and the strategies that really work. And if there's one message for you to take away today, it's this. It's when employers act early on menopause, everyone wins. So picture this. A year from now, your best performer is still with you, not because she fought through symptoms alone, but because you had the right support in place. That quiet dip in confidence never turned into a resignation. That spike in absence never materialized, and instead, you've kept talent others are losing, and you've strengthened your culture in the process. That's the power of proactive care, protecting your people, boosting loyalty, and proving the ROI of doing the right thing. And the opportunity is right here, right now. Before you go, please make sure you scan the QR code on the screen. The next and final event in our World's Menopause Day series, How to Build Your Menopause Business Case, is your chance to workshop your strategy and walk away with a business case that gets results. We also have an in-app event series that we've opened up to everybody who has joined today. So whether you have Peppy or not, scan the QR code on the screen to get the link to 5 in-app events to share with your people who are going through the menopause. We'll also be circulating the link to this event in an email after today's event. Thank you so much for being part of Ready, Set, Meno Live. You've shown today that you're the kind of leaders who don't wait to be caught off guard. You get ahead, and together we can lead the change. Thank you all for joining us.